The royal announcement. The royal palace of Zethera was filled with golden light, its crystal walls shining under the suns of the alien empire. Nobles in long flowing robes, generals wearing armor of polished steel, and diplomats from across the galaxy stood in the grand throne hall. The air was thick with excitement, because tonight the alien queen would make her decision. She would finally choose her life partner. Every corner of the hall buzzed with whispers. Alien lords spoke of their sons, each sure that the queen would select someone of high blood, a warrior from one of the great houses. Some whispered that she might even choose an alliance with another species, one that would bring more power to the throne. No one, not even for a second, thought of the human guard standing silently along the walls. Among those guards stood a young man named Aaron Hale. He was a soldier from Earth, assigned only because humans had recently joined the interstellar alliance. In this palace, he was nothing more than a background figure, a shadow in uniform. His duty was simple: stand straight, protect the royal hall, and never speak unless spoken to. Aaron knew his place and he had no wish to be noticed, but fate that night had other plans. The sound of horns filled the chamber. The queen entered, her tall figure covered in a gown woven with starlight. Her crown reflected thousands of tiny sparks, and her eyes carried the weight of 1,000 worlds. The crowd fell silent, every gaze fixed on her. She sat on the golden throne, her wings folding gracefully behind her, and when she finally spoke, her voice was soft yet powerful. "Tonight," she declared, "I will announce the one who will stand by my side, the one who will rule with me, not with power, but with heart." The hall trembled with expectation. Noble families leaned forward, generals straightened their backs, and suitors lifted their chins with pride. The silence was so deep that even the heartbeat of the soldiers seemed louder. Aaron stood still, gripping the hilt of his blade as he was trained to do, his eyes fixed forward. He told himself this was just another night of duty. He had nothing to do with her choice. But then something strange happened. The queen's eyes moved across the hall, not toward the proud lords, not toward the mighty generals, but toward the soldiers along the wall. Toward him. Aaron felt a chill run down his spine. Her gaze locked on him as if she had known him all her life. He lowered his eyes quickly, thinking it must be a mistake. Why would the queen notice him? He was no prince, no warrior of fame, no man of power. He was just a human guard. The queen stood. Gasps echoed across the room as she raised her hand, pointing directly at him. Her voice rang clear. "I choose him." The hall erupted in shock. Voices overlapped. Shouts of anger and disbelief filled the air. Nobles stood from their seats, their faces red with insult. Generals exchanged furious glances, unable to believe what they had just heard. The queen, the most powerful woman in the empire, had chosen a simple human guard as her husband. Aaron froze where he stood, his heart pounding so hard he thought it would break through his chest. His hands trembled, but his body refused to move. He could feel hundreds of eyes burning into him, filled with hatred, confusion, and jealousy. "This is madness," cried one noble. "A guard? A human? This weak creature cannot rule with you," shouted another. "This is an insult to our traditions," yelled a general, his armored fist slamming the table. But the queen raised her hand, and the hall fell silent once again. Her voice was calm, but her eyes blazed with determination. "You speak of tradition, of blood, of power," she said. "But I speak of something greater. I choose him, not for his title, not for his strength, but for what I have seen in his soul." Her words only deepened the mystery. What had she seen? What could a human guard possibly have that no alien warrior possessed? Aaron felt his throat go dry. He wanted to protest, to step back and explain that she must be mistaken, but his lips would not move. Something in her eyes told him this was no accident. She had chosen him deliberately, and she was not going to change her mind. The nobles whispered furiously among themselves, their voices like hissing serpents in the shadows. Some planned revenge, others plotted how to twist this choice to their advantage. The air grew heavy, dangerous. Aaron's heart thundered in his chest. He had lived his life quietly, serving with discipline, never dreaming that destiny would throw him into the center of the galaxy's greatest stage. Now, with a single sentence, everything had changed. The Queen turned her gaze to him once more. "Guard," she said softly, though her voice carried to every corner of the hall. "Step forward." Aaron's boots felt like stone, but he forced himself to move. Step by step, he walked into the center of the throne hall. The eyes of the Empire followed his every move, some filled with hatred, some with disbelief, and a few with a strange curiosity. When he reached the base of the throne, the Queen extended her hand. His own hand trembled as he placed it in hers. Her touch was warm, her grip firm, as if she was not just choosing him, but binding his fate to hers. Whispers spread, like fire across the galaxy that night. The Queen of Zithera had rejected princes, warriors, and nobles and chosen a human guard. No one understood why, but Aaron could feel it. His life, and perhaps the fate of the entire empire, would never be the same again. The guard's confusion, the moment the Queen's hand touched his. Aaron Hale felt the weight of 1,000 eyes pressing against his skin. The throne hall still buzzed with disbelief. Some nobles sat frozen in shock while others whispered furiously into the ears of their allies. To them, this was more than a scandal. It was betrayal. For centuries, alien nobles had fought for the Queen's hand, offering treasures, armies, and alliances. And yet she had chosen a nameless human guard who stood in silence at the edge of the room. The Queen released his hand slowly and gestured to the council. "The decision is made," she said firmly, her tone leaving no space for argument. "He will stand beside me." But even as she spoke, Aaron's heart thundered. He was a soldier, trained to follow orders, not to stand at the center of royal politics. His hand still trembled, his mind spinning. Why him? Why a human, a guard among many? Had she mistaken him for someone else? Or was there something he, himself, did not yet understand? Guards from the palace approached, not his fellow soldiers but the Queen's personal protectors. Their silver armor reflected the torchlight as they formed a circle around him. "You will come with us," one of them said coldly. It was not a request. Aaron obeyed, his boots heavy against the polished floor as he followed them out of the throne hall. He could feel the hatred of the nobles burning into his back. The corridors of the palace stretched like endless rivers of glass and gold. Alien. Tapestries glowed with shifting patterns telling stories of wars and victories. Yet Aaron could not admire them. His mind was clouded. The whispers of betrayal, the looks of disgust. He had seen many battles in his short military career, but none had prepared him for this silent war of politics. Finally, they brought him into a chamber guarded by 2 massive statues of alien warriors. The doors sealed behind him, and he found himself standing in front of a long table where the Queen's council waited. 12 figures, each cloaked in shimmering robes, their alien eyes cold and piercing. The oldest among them spoke, first his voice sharp like a blade. "Do you know why you are here, human?" Aaron stood straight, though his heart was racing. "No, counselor. I was only following my duty." The counselor's eyes narrowed. "Duty? Do you understand what your Queen has done? She has thrown centuries of tradition into the dust. She has humiliated the noblest families of this empire. And all for you, a human no one has ever heard of." Murmurs of agreement rose from the others. One slammed his fist on the table. "You are not worthy. You are not of our blood, not of our strength. This was a mistake." Aaron's lips parted, but no words came. What could he say? He himself believed this was a mistake. He was no prince, no leader, no legend. He was only a soldier from Earth who had been assigned here because no one else wanted this quiet post. Before he could speak, the doors of the chamber opened, and the Queen herself entered. The council fell silent immediately. Her presence filled the room, her wings glowing faintly in the light. She walked to Aaron's side without hesitation. "This is no mistake," she said, her voice calm yet edged with power. I chose him with clear mind and full heart. One counselor leaned forward, his tone bitter. Then tell us why. Why lower the empire to such disgrace? The queen's eyes swept across the table. Because in a world where everyone seeks power, I saw a man who seeks nothing. In a hall where eyes burn with greed, I saw a gaze free of hunger. You speak of strength and bloodlines, but I have seen something far greater. Aaron felt the queen's words pierce through him like arrows. Her gaze lingered on him, soft yet firm. What had she seen? He wanted to ask, but his throat was dry and fear chained his tongue. The council was not convinced. Their anger simmered just beneath the surface. If this human remains, one said darkly, he will bring ruin upon us. Our enemies will mock us. Our people will doubt us. You cannot stop the tide of fury that will rise. The queen's lips curved slightly, but there was no smile, only cold warning. Then let the tide rise, and let it break upon me, for this is my choice. The council fell into silence, though their eyes spoke louder than words. Hatred, resentment, plans forming in the shadows. Later that night, Aaron was escorted to a chamber prepared for him. It was vast and beautiful, with walls of crystal and a bed carved from living wood. Yet he could not rest. His mind refused to calm. He paced back and forth, replaying the events in his head. Why had she chosen him? What hidden reason lay behind her eyes? Was it possible she mistook him for another man? Or had he crossed her path long before without knowing? The silence of the chamber was broken by a faint sound outside his door, a scrape of metal, the whisper of boots on stone. Aaron froze. Instinct took over. He reached for the dagger at his side, his muscles tightening. Someone was out there, watching, waiting. The thought struck him with sudden clarity. This was not just about marriage or politics. This was about survival. Someone in the palace wanted him gone, and they would not wait long to make their move. The hidden truth, the night air in the alien palace was heavy with silence, but Aaron Hale could not sleep. His instincts as a soldier warned him that something was wrong. The sound he had heard outside his chamber door still echoed in his ears. Whoever was there had not been a servant nor a guard on duty. It had been someone moving with purpose, quiet, careful, dangerous. He gripped the dagger tightly and pressed himself against the wall near the entrance. Moments passed. Then, the faintest shadow slipped beneath the crack of the door. Aaron's breath slowed, his eyes sharp. The latch moved. Someone was entering. With swift motion, Aaron lunged forward, grabbing the intruder's wrist before the blade could strike. The hooded figure hissed and fought, but Aaron twisted the arm, forcing the weapon to clatter to the floor. A curved alien dagger. Not a warning. A killing strike. Before Aaron could demand answers, the assassin slipped free with unnatural speed and fled down the corridor. Aaron chased, boots striking against polished stone, but the figure vanished into the shadows of the palace halls. He stopped, chest heaving, realizing the truth. Someone within these walls wanted him dead. And this had been only the first attempt. The following day, he was summoned by the queen herself. The grand chamber was quiet when he entered. Her figure, illuminated by soft starlight filtering through the tall crystal windows. She looked calm, but there was a heaviness in her gaze, as if she had been waiting for this moment. "You were attacked last night," she said softly, though it was not a question. Aaron nodded. "Yes, Your Majesty. Someone entered my chamber with a blade, I do not know who." Her lips pressed into a thin line. She stepped closer, her wings spreading slightly, casting shadows across the walls. "It begins," she whispered. Aaron frowned. "What begins?" The queen turned her eyes on him, eyes that carried not only beauty but centuries of hidden pain. "The war inside my court. They will not allow my choice to stand. They see you as unworthy, and so they will try to erase you, quietly, without trace, but I will not allow it." Her words sent a shiver through him. He had expected doubt, perhaps even regret. But instead she stood firm, as if his survival was tied to her own destiny. Still, confusion swirled in his mind. But why me? Why choose me when you knew this would bring danger? For a long time the queen was silent. Then she turned and walked toward the great window, staring out into the endless sea of stars. "Do you remember the War of Thalros?" she asked. Aaron blinked. The War of Thalros had been years ago, before he had been stationed in the palace. But fragments of news reports and military briefings returned to him. A rebellion against the crown. An attack on the royal convoy. "I've heard of it," he said cautiously. Her voice grew quieter, tinged with memory. "That night my ship was attacked by rebels. My guards were slain. I fled into the forests of Thalros alone, wounded. And there was a soldier, a human. He fought to protect me without even knowing who I was. His courage burned brighter than any blade. His kindness gave me strength to rise again." Aaron's breath caught. "And that soldier was me?" She turned, her gaze locking onto his. "Yes. You carried me when I could not walk. You gave me water when I could not move. And when the enemy closed in, you stood between me and death. You never asked my name. You never asked for reward. You were only a soldier doing what you believed was right." Aaron felt the memory stir, deep within him. A battlefield, smoke and fire, a wounded stranger he had dragged to safety. He had thought it was only another refugee, someone caught in the chaos of war. He had never known it was her, the queen herself. She stepped closer, her voice filled with quiet strength. "Since that night I knew. The nobles are strong, yes. The generals are ruthless. But none of them carry the heart of a man who would protect without reason, without desire. That is why I chose you. Not for power, not for politics, but because you showed me something greater than any warrior in this empire." Aaron's chest tightened. For years, he had thought of himself as ordinary, just another soldier in a galaxy too vast to care about humans. But to her, that single act had meant everything. Before he could respond, the chamber doors burst open. A royal guard rushed in, his face pale. "Your Majesty," he cried. "There has been another attempt. One of the council chambers was found in flames. The assassin escaped again." The queen's eyes darkened, her wings unfurling fully this time. "The vipers grow bold," she said coldly. "They think they can kill him or frighten me into breaking my word. They do not understand. I will burn this palace to the ground before I let them touch him." Aaron stood stunned by the fire in her voice. He was beginning to see the truth. This was not only about love, nor about gratitude. This was about defiance. By choosing him, she had challenged the very roots of alien tradition. And now, the shadows were moving against them. That night, as Aaron returned to his chambers under heavy guard, he felt the weight of destiny press upon him. He had saved her life once, unknowingly. Now she had tied his fate to hers, and the entire empire was sharpening its blades in silence. And somewhere, in the darkest halls of the palace, unseen figures whispered of a plan, one that would test not only his worth, but the strength of humanity itself. The trial of worthiness. The palace was no longer a place of safety. Each corner seemed filled with whispers. Every hallway carried the heavy weight of suspicion. Aaron Hale, once invisible as a simple human guard, was now the center of an empire's storm. The nobles hated him, the generals wanted him erased, and the shadows whispered of his death. But the queen stood firm, her decision unshaken, and that only made the council bolder. They knew that if they could not kill him in secret, they would destroy him in public. The opportunity came during a heated council meeting. The great chamber buzzed with voices until one of the elder counselors slammed his staff on the floor. His words were sharp as daggers. "If this human is truly worthy," the old voice declared, "let him prove it in the trial of stars. If he survives, none may question the queen's choice. If he fails, his blood will wash away this insult to our traditions. The other counselors hissed their approval. The trial was ancient, a brutal test once reserved for alien warriors seeking honor. No human had ever faced it. Most who entered never returned. The hall trembled with anticipation. The queen rose in fury, her wings spreading wide. The trial is death, she snapped. You would condemn him to slaughter. But the council bowed low, their voices dripping with false loyalty. It is the law, your majesty. Even you cannot deny the ancient ways. Let the empire see if this human has the strength you claim. The queen's eyes burned, but even she knew this was a trap she could not stop. To refuse would be seen as weakness. To fight would spark rebellion. And so with heavy heart she turned to Aaron. You do not have to do this, she whispered. Aaron looked at her, then at the circle of alien eyes staring at him with hatred and expectation. He remembered the night he had carried her through, fire, the promise in her gaze, and the shadow of assassins who would not stop until he was gone. He straightened his back. I will face it, he said simply. The council smiled like wolves who had cornered prey. The date was set. The arena of the Trial of Stars lay beyond the palace, carved into the rock of a mountain beneath a sky lit with twin suns. Thousands gathered in the stands, nobles, soldiers, and citizens alike, eager to see the human's failure. The stone floor of the arena was etched with glowing symbols, each one pulsing with alien energy. Aaron stood at the center, armed only with a short blade and his human will. He wore no armor but the ceremonial sash the queen had tied across his chest, shimmering like starlight. Above on a balcony the queen stood watching, her hands gripping the railing tight enough to crack stone. The horn sounded. The trial began. The first challenge emerged from the shifting ground itself. Creatures of alien origin, beasts bred only for battle, rose from the sands, scaled monsters with fangs that dripped acid. Their roars shook the walls. The crowd cheered, expecting blood. Aaron's grip tightened. Fear pressed against him, but training and instinct roared louder. He dodged the first lunge, his blade slicing across a beast's eye. Acid hissed against stone, narrowly missing him. The crowd gasped. He had drawn first blood. But the trial did not end. The floor shifted again, creating walls of flame that boxed him in. Illusions swirled around him, phantoms of his past, of soldiers who had fallen beside him, voices that begged him to give up. His mind burned with doubt. Yet he pushed forward. He remembered the queen's words. You protect without reason, without desire. He clung to that truth. Not strength of body, but strength of heart. That was what carried him through. Step by step, cut by cut, he fought. Not only the beasts, but the shadows within his own mind. Hours seemed to pass. His body bled, his breath grew heavy, but still he stood. When the final beast collapsed at his feet, silence filled the arena. Not cheers, not jeers. Silence. Because against every expectation, the human still lived. Then a voice rang out. One of the generals, his eyes burning with rage, shouted, "This is not enough! The trial has not ended!" He raised his hand, signaling something, unseen. From the shadows, a greater beast emerged, taller than towers, its body covered in black steel plating, eyes glowing red like fire. This was no part of tradition. This was an execution. The council had twisted the trial into murder. The Queen's voice thundered across the arena. "This is forbidden," she cried, but her words were drowned out by the roars of the beast. Aaron looked up at the monster, his body broken, his blade trembling in his hand. But deep in his chest, a fire still burned. He would not fall here. Not while she watched. Not while the galaxy mocked humanity. He raised his blade one final time, his voice a whisper only he could hear. "If this is where I die, then let it be as the man who stood." The crowd leaned forward. The queen's heart froze and the beast charged. The final choice. The arena shook as the beast charged, its armored body crashing through stone like thunder. Its roar shook the sky, scattering birds into the twin suns, above. The crowd leaned forward, eyes wide with hunger, waiting for the human's death. To them, this was already decided. No man, no alien, no warrior could stand against such a monster. Aaron Hale stood trembling, blood running down his arm, exhaustion burning every muscle. His blade was chipped, his lungs raw, but his eyes still held fire. He had survived the impossible before. He would not fall crawling. The beast lunged, jaws wide like a gate to hell. Aaron rolled aside, the ground splitting where he had stood. He scrambled to his feet, the crowd gasping as he slashed at a joint in the monster's armored leg. Sparks flew, but the blade nearly snapped in his hands. The beast howled in rage, swiping its claw. Aaron was hurled across the arena, crashing into the stone wall. Pain exploded in his chest. The Queen's hands tightened on the balcony rail. "Enough!" she roared, her voice echoing like lightning. "Stop this!" But the council did not move. They smiled, their trap complete. Aaron coughed blood, his vision blurring. He wanted to close his eyes, to surrender to the darkness. But then he saw her, standing above, her eyes locked on his, full of fire, not pity. She had chosen him not for strength, not for glory, but for something deeper. If he died here, her choice would be mocked forever. Humanity would be remembered as weak, unworthy. He could not allow that. Slowly, Aaron pushed himself up. His blade was broken, but his will was not. He remembered the forests of Thalros, when he had carried a stranger on his back while rebels hunted them. He had not fought then for power or recognition. He had fought because it was right, and now the same fire rose within him. The beast charged again. Aaron waited, his body steady, his breath calm. At the last moment, he dove forward, sliding, beneath the monster's legs. With desperate strength, he drove the broken blade into the weak joint he had struck before. Sparks erupted. The beast roared, stumbling. The crowd screamed, half in shock, half in disbelief. But Aaron did not stop. He climbed the creature's armored back, dodging claws that slashed the air. His hands burned. His body screamed in pain, but he climbed higher. With one final cry, he tore the blade free and plunged it deep into the glowing red eye of the beast. The arena exploded with sound. The monster thrashed, its roar shaking the heavens, then collapsed with a ground-shaking crash. Dust and silence filled the air. When it cleared, the human stood upon its carcass, bloodied but unbroken. The silence turned into chaos. Nobles shouted in disbelief. Soldiers stared with awe. And from the balcony, the Queen's voice thundered across the arena. "Behold," she declared, her wings spread wide. "This is why I chose him, not for power, not for blood, but because his spirit cannot be broken. This is the heart of a human." The crowd erupted, not in boos, not in rage, but in cheers. Even those who had doubted now whispered with wonder. A human had faced death itself and triumphed, but the council was not done. One of the generals rose in fury, his voice venom. "This proves nothing. He is still an outsider. He cannot rule." He drew his blade, pointing it at Aaron. The Queen's wings flared, her voice cutting the air like steel. "Then you defy me directly. And if you defy me, you defy the throne." Guards rushed to her side, but she did not need them. Her gaze alone silenced the general, forcing him to step back. The balance of power had shifted. The people had seen the truth with their own eyes. No amount of lies could erase it now. The Queen descended from the balcony, her gown flowing like starlight. She stepped onto the arena floor, walking toward Aaron. He knelt, broken and weary but alive. She reached for his hand, lifting him before the entire empire. "In this man," she said, her voice soft yet carrying to every ear, "I found courage when I had none. I found loyalty when I was abandoned. And I found love where no one expected it. This is my choice. This is my mate. And if the galaxy does not accept it, then let the galaxy burn." The crowd roared. The council fell into silence. Their plots shattered. Aaron met her gaze, his body weak but his heart strong. For the first time he understood. He was not just a guard anymore, he was a symbol. A human who had defied tradition, who had survived where none expected, who had won the heart of a queen. And far beyond the palace walls across the galaxy, whispers began to spread. If a human could stand against monsters, against nobles, against destiny itself, then what else were humans capable of? The story of the alien queen and her human guard had only just begun.